when you're in international expeditions, the kids, they just become so worldly and so caring of each other. Because they are in a strange place, so they'll look after their team and their little community. Yeah, and then kind of appreciation for other people's cultures. Or
Welcome back to the World Extreme Medicine podcast with myself and Walker. In this episode, we're going to be speaking with Gemma Aldridge around taking kids on expeditions and adventures. So we're going to look at some of the challenges of having kids on expeditions, but also the ways to optimize and steward family life, either on or remotely from an expedition. So we're going to examine the advantages of bringing children on expedition. We're also going to look at the challenges it can pose, some of Gemma's experiences whilst raising a family, and finally how to optimize either bringing a family with you or indeed remotely being involved in family life. So we're going to discuss mitigation plans, communication devices, some of the extra considerations that you need to think about. We're also going to look at the environment and children's approach to adventure and much more. So Gemma, welcome to the podcast.
hey, all right.
Good, thanks. Gemma, I wonder if just for listeners, if you could just introduce yourself a little bit about yourself and what role you currently do.
Yeah, sure. So I am a practice development nurse in an A&E, and also a mountain leader working on expeditions, either with young people or with people with mental health illnesses or preventative for mental health, just wellness and mindfulness and all the good stuff.
So I suppose a good place to start, Gemma, would be what drew you into expedition medicine in the first place? Because it's much wider than just going on expeditions. I think for you, like you said, to do a mountain leader course, you really have to own the domain. You really feel like you have to integrate and get to know the finer points. Could you speak to your journey, and then we'll approach the part around children.
So I think for me, I had, to be honest, quite a difficult childhood, and with that became I had a lot of freedom. So I would quite often go out roaming around the hills for the day, and really found my capabilities and kind of limitations, if you like, in like the wilderness. And there's something quite like rewarding about surviving in the wild and overcoming problems that you're faced with. So it taught me quite a lot for myself of resilience and really appreciating what we have on our doorsteps and what we can access. That nature is left everything there for us. We have everything we need to survive and thrive in the wilds. So for me, that has always been my safety zone and my comfort, rather than where people would normally perhaps find that. And then from there, I kind of just wanted to share it with others. So I started off at high school doing Duke of Edinburgh Award, became a young leader, went through some cadet stuff. So went and did a leadership program, taught with the Institute of Leadership Management, Duke of Edinburgh, and then started taking young people on expeditions. And then the way that I got into the mental health industry was actually through a paramedic friend of mine who went through a particularly rough time, where he's one of the LOMs, so local manager, and he had a series of really quite difficult traumatic jobs, one after the other, all at Christmas, some horrific stuff that we won't go into. And he was looking after his team, but no one was really looking out for him and making sure that he was supported. And it got to New Year, and he couldn't face going into work and didn't really want to be here and stuff like that. So he messaged me and just said, just take me away, take me to the mountains. So I did. And with that, he got a lot of respite. It didn't fix everything, and he went out and did like rewind therapies and stuff later on. But for that moment in time, it was exactly what he needed. And the benefits he had from being out in the wild. We had a horrific storm. It was truly atrocious. We were soaked through. I was blown off my feet. I had to take an emergency escape route off the mountain. Like, it was really awful. But then, we got to this stone bothy and lit the fire. And, then those kind of really organic conversations that you would have in confidentiality with a friend who has some understanding of what they've been through and can, empathize and listen and really give them the space to kind of think about everything and just start to relax everything in the body system. So really rewarding for him. And then consequently for me, facilitating it. So then after that weekend, we then said, right, we'll do it for some others. So we did it for a group of paramedics. And then I was looking after a friend who's, like a fell running celebrity. And I was saying, I can't really keep up with the admin because I was getting so many requests. So he said, well, actually, why don't we merge? So he set up a charity, Mind Over Mountains, and we merged so that now I just get to do the nurse mountain leader stuff, and we have a psychiatrist and a counselling team, and we all go out together with our group of patients or group of participants from different specialities. So we take out like the police or the probation service. We took a refugee asylum group recently. And then now that facilitates their own kind of expedition week or weekend, depending on which one they do.
Listen, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. I think one of the things my revelations was about caring for the carers, because I think to your point, and before we do migrate, looking at how and where and when you take children on expedition, I think the mental health piece is dramatically overlooked about fundamentally carers being cared for, and the restorative nature of expeditions, the restorative nature of just being out in the wilderness, and actually what that gives back to clinicians. Because I think, to your point, all too often the tap is open and they're giving, but there's never any equilibrium. They never take back for themselves and just have that restorative experience. Could you maybe speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have always known exactly as you say, the restorative nature of being in the outdoors and having that time, space, and challenges that it presents us. But I think in the carers world, it's self-sacrificing, isn't it? Who are they going to offload to? When are they going to give themselves time and give themselves space and not have that guilt about it? Because, for example, College of Paramedics, we do a 4-day kind of expedition for them, and the same for some of the police forces. When are you ever going to give yourself 4 days completely for you, not for anybody else? Go to a group of strangers, use that time to benefit yourself, be selfish, be served on. They don't cook, we do that for them, and actually just have that kind of catch up, and then all these conversations that we have, fireside chats, everything like that, they're all the brain processing in one form or another. And the counsellors and psychiatrists that we work with will then guide that where cases may need to be. And they're amazing. So they do like group mindfulness sessions, and they'll do like how are you presenting, how are you arriving today, and they'll do things like horizons. So you look at a point on the horizon. Now imagine yourself at that point in the future. What kind of person would you like to be? How are you going to get there? Whereas we wouldn't, in our everyday job, we wouldn't stop and give that to ourselves. Our time is filled with looking after other people, and it's great. Like, of course we should look after each other, but it has to be that balance.
That's key. And like you said, the balance is often not necessarily there. There is no balance, like you said, especially in our working day, 12-hour shifts. The demands are unending. But just that's a nice pivot in a way, because like you said, a couple of things you said there, Gemma, around community time, the fireside chats, and the access to the outdoors in a safe and guided fashion. Now that's a great sort of way to bring children onto expedition or with you, because again, it's mutually exclusive community, so you're getting chance to interact with them solely, but also hopefully in a safe way, just guide them and lead them into nature, and indeed give them some skills along the way. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, definitely. So I think, the expedition world for young people, whether it's teenagers or even younger sometimes, they can really test their boundaries, work out who they are, what they do and don't like, interact with people they might not normally go out with. We've had young people, so I've had like a group of 6-year-olds making kindling with their little moral knives and stuff like that. So even their fine motor skills and stuff will be developed in one way or another. I've had young people who are labeled as the naughty ones, and it's not not at all. You take them into the environment where they can relax a bit, and actually they'll really come into themselves. They'll find what they're good at, and quite often they end up being really good leaders, because you give them a responsibility and you say, right, well, here's the map, work out where we're going next, how we're going to get there, and they'll take it upon themselves and they'll really achieve. And it's so rewarding, and they'll find their own resilience. They quite often like binning off the mobile phones, and they'll reflect on it themselves. They get to the end of their week and they'll go, oh, actually, I didn't really miss it. They look forward to going home and telling people about it, but they enjoy being in the moment and kind of socializing with people on that expedition, and actually having those fireside chats, or a game of Uno. Like, children still like Uno, like whatever age. Like, it's really good.
To your point, Gemma, it's about coming back to the basics and just enjoying the basics of community, of card games, of the navigation, but also just having general chats with them when you're on expedition. Could you maybe speak to the more challenging aspects, maybe through your anecdotal experience or indeed reflections of taking children on expedition?
So I think the obvious challenges are things going to be like living in close commune with people for a longer period of time than we used to. That can quite often put a strain on people, especially if you've got people that don't sleep very well, or they need to get up to use the bathroom, which isn't there. Especially if you're wild camping up in Scotland, like that's a whole thing for teenagers in itself, and some adults in cases. And then things like food, like they're perhaps not used to the diets that you have, either because it's international and the diet is different to our own, or just sometimes because we're using rehydrated meals and stuff like that they're not used to it. They've got to try something new. But they soon adapt to it. Actually, they're hungry kids will eat. I think some of the other difficulties, I've worked with a couple of charities about equipment. Previously, different charities like British Exploring, they were very much for affluent families only, whereas now there's been loads of research actually into making it freely available for all, and the benefits to people who are in less affluent kind of families. And the Wilderness Foundation do the same, actually. So we had a group of young people who were from very difficult backgrounds, and made sure that they had access to the outdoors. Getting them equipped can be a bit of a challenge and a hurdle. So there are, there's like re-gift your gear and stuff like that Rohan, Sarah organised. And then just, even if families can afford it, they grow so quickly. Like, even my own children, like my kids, they go through boots like every 6 months. They're in a new pair of boots, and they're not cheap. Like, and you want them to have good gear because you want it to be, effective. So you want to make sure they've got a good jacket and a good underlayer. But they just grow fast. And if you don't have many friends with kids the same age, you can't swap items as easily as you can adults. Like, it's much easier for adults. There's a bigger range and their variety. But yeah, I think getting kids properly equipped is one of the things I've always had to consider, and we've had to loan out kit or get grants and stuff like that.
Gemma, could you speak to sort of the concept of instilling self-care within children and that regularity of drinking, of hygiene, of nutrition, and indeed just the concept of kind of situation awareness as well, in adverse conditions or indeed changing conditions such as weather. Could you speak to your experiences of how you've both instilled that principle of self-care and situation awareness?
So, with my own children, I've always kind of let them kind of develop and grow in the outdoors and test their own boundaries. So if they want to climb a tree, they can climb a tree. If they can't to get down, I'll leave them there for a few minutes, let them work it out. I know they're safe. My daughter particularly, she is a climber. She's actually doing rock climbing for one of her GCSE PE. But when she was smaller and not a proper rock climber, she would always be climbing still. So I would teach her, that's okay, you can do that, but you need to climb down coming backwards rather than forwards, and really kind of support and facilitate what they want to do, but making sure they're still safe whilst they're doing it. I think with other people's children, it's a bit different because you don't have the duration of time that I've had with my own. So we tend to um, try and have a kind of meeting, hopefully in person, so you can take them out for a day walk and then kind of cook on trangias or talk to parents and stuff like that. Sometimes it's by teams. With the adults in the mental health charity that I work for, it's always on teams. But kind of give them a briefing, let them know this is the expectation of the week ahead. So they know, there'll be toilets at this point and this point, but nothing in the middle. We will be cooking on fire or on trangias, whatever we happen to have at the time. And this will be the sleeping accommodation. So whether it's use of bothies or bunk houses or wild camps. So yeah, really give them an understanding. And then the same with toileting, if it's wild wheeze or, particularly like teenage girls with menstruation and stuff like that, like those are all conversations that have to be had. And they're always a bit coy about it at first, but by the end of it, they're kind of not really getting over it, but kind of accepting of it. And they do kind of adapt quite quickly.
Would you say that there is a real differentiator between sort of children which have been brought up in the environment versus more urban children? Do you when you've been away with teenagers and or children in the past, is it a whole different set of skills? Are you sort of having to come back to the basics a lot, or how have you approached that?
Yeah, I think at a basic level, actually, the young people, children, they have the ability to adapt. They know what their basic needs are, and kids are very good at telling you, because they'll say if they're hungry and they'll say if they're cold, and if they don't say, they make it abundantly obvious because they'll be shivering or they'll get a bit hangry or back when it's to the basics. Actually, I think young people, it doesn't matter what background they've had. I think when it gets to the smaller kind of nuances of things, you can tell which children have been socialized more or have been put into new experiences. So a lot of young people, they'll have various anxieties around either people and socializing or kind of the different environment that we happen to be working in. And I think you can tell kids that have had more opportunity and kind of that versatility. Yeah. Because they do kind of adapt a bit easier and find their comfort a little bit quicker than some of the others. The others might need a bit of support. Also, you kind of get young people, they're like, oh yeah, we know you said there was no toilet, but we didn't think you really meant it. Or we've had kids turn up and their rucksack, they've got, no kidding, they've got like, I'm not very girly, hair straighteners. In their rucksack, and we're like, no, you've only got a battery pack, that's not going to do your hair straighteners. And they'll be like, oh. So yeah, like you do, whereas the kids that kind of travel a bit more, they're kind of like, yeah, we can bin off that. Like they're much more, they're like, oh, just the girls French plait their hair a lot Yeah. So I think the nuances of getting on with people and that that's what you can really tell the difference on.
In around communication, Gemma, could you speak to sort of how you facilitated communication for maybe longer periods of time, or indeed your own children when they've not been with you, but you've wanted to reach back into another country or indeed back home? What modalities do you use if the cell phone isn't, if there's no cell signal?
Yeah, so I have an inReach. So I was away from home for 6 weeks, and that was quite a long period of time for my children. Not so much my son, who was a teenager, very independent, but my daughter was quite young at the time, and just going into high school and stuff like that. So the inReach for me, we always talk about where I'm going to go, what I'm going to be doing, and why. So why is always kind of the important. Like people have to have purpose, and the people around you need to understand that purpose. That you're not just going off willy nilly and doing what you want to because it's fun. Sometimes it is fun, but we're there for a reason, and that's really important for them to understand. The inReach then for us, for my family, certainly it helps them because it plots where I am on the computer. So they can actually see day by day where in the world I am and where I've traveled to. So they can kind of follow my movements. And it also lets me, the mini inReach will let me send text messages home. So I have auto messages set up for my husband, which will then get to the children, and my father-in-law, who I'm really close with, so that they know it's the end of the day. We've set up camp, all's good. If we've been in the Alps or something like that, or kind of bigger expedition work, then they know that we're down safe, up safe, whichever way we're going. So that's always been helpful. I think, although you said no mobiles, I actually do take my mobile, but I quite often buy a SIM card in country, because, for example, my network in the UK is rubbish. I don't really have much coverage anyway, and I definitely don't abroad. But when we're in Nepal, get a Nepalese SIM card. I've had mobile phone coverage up at like Gorak on EBC camp trek, and yeah, like you can send pictures home and you can get pictures back. I've missed a couple of like school things that they can then tell me what they've been up to, either by texting on the inReach or by using like the WhatsApp-y type stuff on like in-country SIM cards. So yeah, there's ways around it. I also I'm very aware that whilst you're away working, you're busy, you're doing things, you're getting to know new people, like the time flies for you. Whereas at home, they're going about their normal daily business. So, I mean, for my family, like the kids are busy, they've got their own interests, they've got clubs, they go climbing, kayaking, and everything else like that. So they are busy, but when it gets to bedtime and things like that, then it's more noticeable that you're not there. Whereas bedtime for me on expedition, especially with young people, is the time where the kids will get nervous. They suddenly realize that sound travels at night. It's, strange environment. They don't sleep properly. They miss home. So you're still busy and you're still occupied. Whereas my kids at home aren't so much. So what I tend to do is kind of like sneak little things home. So if I know I'm going to miss something, so, for example, last December we were in Oman with Wim, and I missed St. Nicholas's Day, which isn't very big in the UK, but my husband's family are Dutch like relatives, and my son has a Dutch name, so we've always done St. Nicholas's Day, and I missed it. So I arranged for, so St. Nicholas comes down the chimney and puts sweets in the boots of children and stuff. So I arranged for that to happen, and they got post and special treats sent to them anyway. So even though I wasn't there to do it, that still happened for them. They didn't miss out. And I think that's kind of really important, is being aware that you've left them behind, and you might be off doing something good or fun, but they've got that normal routine still going on without you, which you would normally be a part of. but you can't always. So when you're back, you kind of have to make use of the time. So my daughter's 14 now, but like I will still, if she, when she gets out of the shower, she's got really long hair, like Rapunzel hair down past her bum, and I will still separate her hair and blow dry it like every night that I'm home. If she wants it blow dried, I'll sit there for ages, and it's a tedious thing. It goes on forever. You have to split her hair into different parts because it's so long and so thick. But actually, that time for us is so precious because it's that uninterrupted mother-daughter time. The hairdryer's on, so you can't really hear anything else anyway. So it's just making that time, like just for us, just to show that you still care. And I had my niece actually. So my niece had some difficulties with the stepfather. She came to stay with us for a little while. So I did the same for her. I sat there and I did her hair for her and everything like that. And it wasn't something that she had been used to getting. And she was a bit like, oh, like a bit like unexpected, unsure at first. But then the next night she was actually saying, oh, will you dry my hair again? And just that little bit of nurture time and letting them know and showing that, you are still important in my life, even if you have other stuff in your life going on, they are still the center of it. And you still love them and you can still provide and care and everything like that, even though you're not there all the time.
Gemma, could you speak to when you've had to treat children on expedition, or indeed young people on expedition? Because, as you said, I think, there is an exploration of boundaries, and there's also getting used to not having access to the hot water when you just want it, when you need to turn it on. And so, I think things can happen, or indeed circumstances can change quite quickly. Dehydration can crop up quite quickly. Could you maybe speak to some times where you've had to intervene, and indeed sort of turn it into a learning experience for maybe the wider group?
Yeah. So I think in terms of dehydration and self-care and looking after those basics, I've definitely had to remind young people that, not to get too ahead of themselves. And it's kind of like that alpha syndrome where they want to storm on ahead and, go and do everything all at once because it's so amazing. And you kind of have to slow them down a bit and say, like, guys, we've got all week. Let's enjoy the bit that we're in now. Let's make sure that we can enjoy the rest of the week, and make sure that, our campcraft and everything is all as good as it should be. And whether that's filtering water or boiling water, and, that thing all takes time. I tend to try and make it different people's responsibility each day, because it gives them a sense of responsibility. They know the expectations of the day, so they know what their chore is for that time. But then also you can rota them time off. So if they want to go and journal or just chill or have a nap even sometimes, then, they get that opportunity as well. So we'll kind of specify, right, this is the time, we're all going to stop. Some of you are going to collect firewood. Some of you are going to start chopping up a potato, like whatever it may be. And we'll kind of make sure that they kind of get done. I think to say about kind of challenges and interruptions, there have been times actually where behaviour has been the biggest. I've had to stop groups because of illness, and I've had to stop groups because of behaviour to manage that. I would say the behaviour thing, we kind of set up group contracts and stuff when we kind of set out and we do that first meet and greet. But obviously you will get kids who conflict, same as adults. I have only ever had to stop probably two young people properly. So one of them punched a tree actually, and not me, but my colleague just kind of broke the ice and went, well done for punching the tree, not the person. And it kind of just broke it up a little bit. And then kind of gave them some time set aside away from people, just give them a bit of space and then sit down with them and kind of talk and work out what's going on for them right now. Because if that's not normal for them, what is going on really. You'd be amazed actually when you take young people or adults actually, when you take them away into different environments, all the secrets come out, all those worries, everything that's tried to be hidden from our normal everyday life. That all will quite often spill out, and sometimes it's because they feel safe and they can do it, and they've built in these really intense relationships with the people in their group or the leaders, and that's kind of quite good. And the other young person, I I didn't stop her. But I did have to get some extra help. So I had a young person who, again, had a really difficult background, wasn't in school, and I really, really wanted her to come to 2 expeditions. And if she went to both, then she would get a certificate from the Institute of Leadership Management in teamship. So it's really, really important. And I really wanted her to go. But she would regularly self-harm, regularly run away, and have like police force and helicopters looking for her and things like that. And I was like, I really want to take you, but you cannot run away in this environment because it's not safe. And me trying to find you, I don't want to be doing a search and rescue at 5 o'clock in the morning with very limited staff and a lot of other young people to look after. So we set in very, very early days a behaviour agreement. So I said, right, well, if it starts to become overwhelming, which of these people in this group do you feel able to go to? Because we want to start addressing it in really early days and stop that from escalating. And in the main, she actually did really, really well. Until she clashed with one adult. And it was such a shame, actually. There was an adult that kind of they hit head to head, and they both thought they were in the rights, and kind of neither would back down a little bit. And it ended up where she just sort of threw a few things around and stormed off. And that kind of managed to bring her back to the group and just kind of readdressed that this isn't what we agreed. What we agreed was that you'd walk away and you'd go and find this person. And I didn't send her home, but she did get the certificate. And actually, she didn't get GCSEs. So on her CV, she then went in and, and you probably know better than I do, actually. In the ambulance service, they had the people cleaning out the vehicles and stuff like that. She got a job doing that. But she had no GCSE at all. So the teamship was one of the only certificates that she had. And that was from doing 2 weeks on different expeditions. And she learned so much, like just about what she was capable of, and overcoming all the problems that she'd had. And there was still more to come, actually. She wasn't out the other side of it yet. She is now. She's doing fine, but she wasn't out the other side at the time. And she was a really good young person.
So just before we come into land, Gem, a couple of things really. I'm going to ask about just some of the real benefits of taking children and or young adults on, and what it really does for their psyche and for their visions and their sense of capacity and ability and agency. But before we go there, could you speak to the nutrition piece? Because we do know that young people have got extremely high rates of metabolism. They burn through energy extremely quickly. Like you said, there's the future sense of self when you're younger isn't quite as well developed. So you haven't got an appreciation that you might need to conserve energy for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 hours if you're going on long hikes. Could you speak to that nutrition piece? And then we'll look at the other question.
So we almost double the calories that they ingest. We do that through not only stuff like 5-pot meals and stuff like that, but we'll have lots of snacks as well, and kind of really high protein, lots of carbohydrate as well. And then they have their sugary stuff as well. And we'll play games with it. So if it's really poor weather and you're all hunkered down in a bothy or something like that, then you'll pass around the fruit pastels, but get them to close their eyes and guess what flavor it is or something like that, like silly games. And it always picks them up when they are getting a bit hangry. Dinner time is always, there's always seconds. So they'll have their ration pack that they've carried, but then we'll also have like loads of spares. And you can guarantee they'll want, like, have you seen the army chocolate pudding pack things? They love them. Like, they go down so well. So they'll always come back for more of that. And then snacks, and tell them to bring their own snacks as well. If they can carry it, they can have it. So loads and loads of snacks. And that actually helps also with if they are fussy eaters, or, aren't familiar with food that we're using. Or my daughter's actually really, like, she's so limited on what she does and doesn't like. So if they bring in their own snacks, there's something that they'll enjoy. So loads and loads of snacks, loads of protein, loads of carbs, loads of calories. But they burn it off. Like, and if they're sleeping outdoors, they'll even burn more at night because we're having to keep ourselves warm. And yeah.
And so finally, could we just look at that sense of agency and autonomy that the outdoors brings for children, and that widening of scope and indeed belief in one's own ability?
Yeah, I think when they set off, they think it's something they've never done before, or, would be impossible to do and things like that. And by the end of their week, they've really honed in some of those skills and really developed. And actually, they then take that with them into their everyday life. So they know that, they can achieve stuff. Whether it's, a teamwork that they didn't think they could be, or a leader that they didn't think they were, or, just the ability to adapt or overcome problems, because there are always problems on camp. You'll navigate and you'll take a wrong direction, and they'll have to backtrack or triangulate and work out where they are again. And, they really learn, that they can achieve things and develop. And, it's all that kind of adversity stuff that we talk about, and actually expedition shows them exactly what it is. When you're in international expeditions, the kids, they just become so worldly and so caring of each other, because they are in a strange place. So they'll look after their team and, their little community. And then kind of appreciation for other people's cultures. Or like my daughter, my daughter is so political. She always, like, even with the stuff that's going on at the moment, Israel, Palestine, everything like that, like, she knows about it because it's places that we've talked about going, or religions that we've kind of lived amongst and things like that. Like, she really wants to understand those people and what side they're coming from, and what's normal life for them, like, and really appreciate the differences. And then to know that she is not set, this is a life I've presented her, that I've offered them, but it doesn't have to be like that. Like, they can go off and choose their own and kind of go across their own interests, live where they want to. Like, she's got a whole list of places that she wants to go and things she wants to see. And my son's the same. Actually, he's decided that he does want to do this. So he is now going on his own trips, and he's done, like, he's a water baby, not a climber. So he's got his own little niche. So he's done, like, his open water rescue, swift water rescue, and he was adapting. So they had someone unconscious in the water, and he adapted a paddleboard into a stretcher, roped somebody in with some of the lifeguard things to kind of immobilize the patient, and then carried them off on this makeshift stretcher. And he's now decided that that's what he wants to do. He wants to travel. He wants to do kayak type expeditions, open water swimming, like swim, surf and time, and kind of use medicine and the outdoor world in the same way I had. He didn't have to. And he's always known that, that's what we do. That's what we offer him. But he's seen so many other things. At one point, he really liked cooking. So we've always got involved with cooking, whether it's been in really remote villages, having, like, pancakes cooked on a piece of stone over a fire, or like Moroccan. We were in Morocco literally just before their earthquake. We just got home before it. But we were right where the epicenter was, and they were making tangines from, like, potato and peppers and stuff like that. So then, like, he really enjoyed doing the cooking side of stuff. I hate cooking. I do it because I have to. I don't have patience. I get bored if I do the same thing too many times. But he really enjoyed it. So yeah, yeah, they learn a lot.
Yeah, listen, that's fantastic, and it really speaks to your passion for just shared experience and indeed broadening other people's experience. So that's absolutely fantastic. Thank you for the last period of time, and just for your reflections. They've been fantastic. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the episode. Please feel free to rate, review, and subscribe on whichever platform you're listening to. Please also head over to the World Extreme Medicine website, where you can find more engaging content on extreme medicine webinars and indeed the collection of courses from our global network, including humanitarian, disaster relief, expedition, space, military, tactical, and performance medicine. Thanks again.